Welcome. I'm Ashley Berg from the website How Do I Go On, and I'm here with my friends Veronica Clark and Sandra Winchester, and we're talking about grief and loss. If you remember in the last session, we talked about staying in the present and how that can help us avoid being trapped from guilt from the past and fears of the future. So today we're gonna really focus on overcoming those fears. So ladies, my first question for you is, how does staying present help you fight fear?
Well, I think, like we said last time, when we were talking about staying present, I think it's important to remember that in the present is the only place that we can act. We can't yet act in the future because it hasn't happened, and things in the past are done, so there's nothing we can do about them. So acting in the future is how we fight fear. And fear is always centered on things from the past or these apprehensions about what is going to happen in the future. And so as we dwell on those past or future fears, they stop us from acting in the present. And Will Smith had this great quote in the movie Back to Earth, and that I just want to read. He's teaching his son about fear, and this is what he says. He says, but if we're going to survive this, you must realize that fear is not real. It is the product of the thoughts you create. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It's the product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. And I love that quote because it helped me realize that that's what I was actually doing when I was fearing, because I was telling myself a story about something that might never even happen. And a lot of times we fear things that aren't going to happen, and we waste a lot of energy on that. And I can choose to tell myself whatever story I want. And when I stay present, that's what I'm doing, is choosing my story.
I love that.
Ditto to what she just said. Big ditto on that. I think the thing that came to my mind too was typically if you do experience fear of the future, it's because you're looking back at the past. Because you're looking back to the time you burnt your finger on the stove and you're thinking it's going to happen again. Which those lessons are not a bad thing to learn. Obviously, if you've touched your finger somewhere and got burnt, then it's going to teach you to not do it in the future. But we can't dwell on that, and we can't be in a doomsday situation where everything that happened in the past is going to happen in the future. We just need to be aware of it, cognizant, and we just need to stay in the present. Staying in the present, when I'm in the present moment, I don't have the fear. I have more joy, and I have faith. When I am looking back and I'm looking forward, I don't tend to have that joy, and I don't have the faith that I need to move forward. I'm stuck. So I think staying present is the only way you can fight fear.
Okay, so if we're going to fight fear, like when you're experiencing it, what have you guys found works for you to like really center yourself to be able to like cast that fear away?
Well, I think I have to get myself back in a place where I can feel the Spirit. And that is often my answer for like everything. So it's going back to some of those things that we talked about in our earlier videos. Prayer and studying the scriptures, listening to inspirational music or talks, even journaling. And sometimes I have found that I just have to pour out all of those feelings and frustrations before there's a place in me that can receive a new perspective from the Spirit. I think some people do that effectively through talking with other people or through writing. I do a little bit of both, but I always make sure that I do it to God. And eventually when I'm done with everything that I have to say, I find that then I'm in a better place that I can kind of hear. I guess another thing that helps me hear that and kind of get that is to just do some physical exercise, physical work, something that's really strenuous, that makes me sweat and get tired. Then I find I'm kind of like too tired to fight, and then I'm in this better place where I'm like, okay, but, help me out.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's true, because I was thinking when you just said the exercise thing, a lot of times what I'll do is I pound the pavement a lot. I'm out walking all the time, and I'm finding that when I'm out there, it's like all of a sudden I have this clear head come over me, and I find that that's when I'm able to work through things. And usually I do a lot of self-talk. When I'm starting to get into a phase of fear, I do a lot of self-talk, and that's when I start to meditate. That's when I start to pray. That's when I start to really commune with God, because I realize where that fear is coming from. It is not coming from Him, and I realize that is what gets me centered back. I'm learning, and you'll learn what helps you to get recentered and refocused. And walking is something that helps me to recenter and to refocus myself. And when I do, I pray, I talk, I meditate. I love it. It's therapy for me.
That's great. And I've heard a lot of people say music, like uplifting music, or even some people like crazy music to just like dance it out and get that energy going. So yeah, you really have to find what works for you, and that's the part that's hard. Sometimes we try what works for everybody else, but we really have to center in on what works for us. So
okay,
yesterday,
you know what, Ashley, I just have to add this while you said that.
Yes.
You're laughing, the whole music thing, because that's another thing. When I'm out walking, I have my music blaring, and it's got a beat to it. And so I'm sure there's times that I'm skipping down the sidewalk and people are like, whoa, what's that geek's deal? You know, but really whatever works, music is huge for me, because I love music. So I love that you brought up the music thing too.
Well, and sometimes you can connect with the words because the person singing the song is going through something similar, you know? And I always love to turn on songs like that where I'm like, oh yeah, I feel that too. But then how am I going to get over it, you know? Or maybe there's a song that tells you how she got over it, or he. Yep. But yeah, there's so many things. Some people enjoy working out. Some people enjoy doing a craft or talking to a friend, and some people hide in their closet and pray to God. You just, whatever works for you to center yourself, it'll give you strength. Totally. Okay, so yesterday, my little boy was like screaming at the dog, like, come inside, and just kind of panicked. And I was just like, come on, buddy, let's go eat, and trying to calm him down. And we were sitting there eating lunch, and he's like, how come Heavenly Father never answers my prayer? And I was like, wait, what do you mean? Well, he never answers. Well, today I prayed that it was going to be a good day, and look at it. It's like stormy outside. And I said, wait a minute, so you can only have a good day if it's not stormy outside? And he was like, well, yeah, that's the kind of day I was praying for. And I was like, well, here's the hard part. Somebody else might have been praying today for rain. Maybe their crops or something they need. We need a storm today. So how can Heavenly Father answer everybody's prayer? And I said, maybe what we have to start praying for is that we can have a good day inside. Not necessarily that we can control the weather or ask Him to change what's going on around us, but that we can. And then I was like, am I talking to him or me? Okay, I'm talking to myself. So inside is where we have to really center ourselves, because the things around us, the people around us, might cause more fear and more chaos, and the choices that they make and we can't control might cause us to feel more fear that we're not good enough. But inside is where we can really get centered and connect to God. So how do you guys find that strength to face your fears, but to also know that whatever's going on around you can't be what you gauge your happiness on? Because sometimes, like my happiness, when my kids are having a hard time at school, my fear of being a bad mom like kicks in, or if my husband's struggling, or if somebody else is struggling, it like triggers my fears. Do you guys know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Okay, so what gives you strength besides like music and those kind of things? What gives you strength to really keep you from being paralyzed in that fear?
You know, I think that's where faith comes in. Faith and fear are distinct opposites. Where faith exists, fear does not, and vice versa. So we have to find our faith. Faith will push out fear, and faith really can be a power when we put it into action. And we don't have to do that alone. I can always pray and ask God for help to do hard things. Things that scare me or that cause me to fear, I can choose whatever little faith I have and plant that seed and allow that to start to grow, and God will come in and give me the extra help to do. I can do my part by being obedient, by choosing to do good things. We talk a lot about grace, and sometimes we need grace to help us face our fears. Sometimes whatever power is in us isn't enough, and we need that little extra boost. So, you know, I get that by going back to God and focusing on those things that I know that are true, that He loves me, He wants to help me, and He will be there with my back to help me face these things that are difficult.
You know, I think along those same lines, the thought that hit me was, okay, you guys will understand this. Recording these videos for me was a fear because it's something I'm not familiar with. It was something I was very uncomfortable. I was used to doing public speaking. I was used to doing that sort of thing, but this is very different for me. And there was a lot of fear that came over me when you guys know how it was when we first started. We're like, ah, hate this. But what I've learned through fear too is a lot of times you just have to do it in the fear sometimes. And the more you do something that you're not comfortable with, the better you become at it, and the more the fear goes away, and the more that, so sometimes it's about the doing and continue in spite of the fear to trust and to step out there on that water and know that God's going to catch you and you're not going to drown. And so this for me was a really good example of me having a major fear that I had to overcome. And I'm still working on it, but every time you do it, it gets a little bit easier. So I think doing it.
Well, that's what acting in faith is.
Absolutely.
You know, okay, God will help me to do this, so I'm going to do what I can and trust that He will make the rest difference. One fear I had, a big fear when Scott died, was that I was not going to be able to be a sufficient parent to my children, especially through boys. And that without him here, that death was going to cause such a deep hurt in them that it was going to screw up the rest of their lives. And so that was a real fear I had, and I had to let go. I couldn't control it. I couldn't control how they were dealing with grief. I couldn't take that circumstance away from them. So eventually I had to come to this point where I could trust that God loved them too and was their parent, and would help me do. He would make what I did enough. And I think sometimes that's what we fear, is that we're not going to be enough, that no matter what we do, it won't be enough. I love the parable in the scriptures about the loaves and the fishes, because they didn't have very much. They only had a few loaves and a few fishes. And they gave it all to Christ, and then He gave them back this abundance. Not just enough, but more than enough. He multiplied what they had and made it more. And He can do that. He can do that with our efforts too, if we're willing to partner up with Him. And that's the key. It's not about us doing it on our own. It's about acknowledging that we need God's help and doing it His way, and the right, the way He wants to do it.
Awesome. I think too, another thing that comes along with fear is like the enticement to avoid. Like if I just avoid it, then it's going to go away, like little things that after you go through a grief, when you're grieving a loss, like I would just avoid like cleaning certain things, or I don't know, my mind would just avoid things to try to like shield myself from the pain. And even now I'll be like spring cleaning this week, and I'll find a closet that's like destroyed. And at first I'm like, I'll just shut the door and I think it'll go away. Like eventually someone's going to have to come and clean it. So I have to stop myself and be like, hold on, quit avoiding. This is not going to go away. And it's the same with our pain. Like if we just avoid it for our whole life, what we're going to do is push people away, and we're going to avoid relationships, and we're going to avoid the really important things. But if we can just push through it and say, you know what, no, today this closet's getting cleaned. Today I'm going to face this fear and I'm going to overcome it. And the hardest ones are the ones I'm going to fight first. And just kind of like put on our boxing gloves and get to work. Spring cleaning is kind of a boring job, but it's really teaching me a lot about my patterns these last 5 years of avoiding. And I don't want to do that anymore. I want to like just charge it, So does anybody else have anything else they want to talk about fear before we wrap it up?
Well, just like you said, I mean, when we choose not to avoid things and we face them, when we face our fears and we act, that's how we overcome them. That's how we overcome them.
Totally. Just face them. Okay, well, next time we're going to be focusing on another aspect and emotion associated with grief, and that's loneliness. And we're excited to really get down to how to avoid loneliness, how to work through that. So please join us next time, and make sure you follow the links below to the website and get on there and look at the badges and the different stories that are on there to help you through this overcoming fear. And also, if you like these videos, please follow us so you can make sure you get up to date when we are doing these. Thank you so much.